Welcome to the Sound of Resistance channel. The occupation launched by Russia against Ukraine was active today. The Russian army could not recover after the great defeat yesterday. The Russian forces were disappeared after successive failures. It has been observed that some Russian commanders, especially close to Putin, are now very close to giving up. The most important men of the Russian army put great pressure on Putin to withdraw at the secret meeting held in the Kremlin. The Russian army, unable to respond to the attacks of Ukraine, had no choice but to surrender. The Ukrainian army destroyed most of the warships in the Russian navy in its last attack. Putin, sick with the arrogance and about to fall into bed, had to admit how exhausted and demoralized the Russian troops had become by summoning the reserve soldiers. This declaration of mobilization by Russian leader Vladimir Putin is not a show of strength, but an indication of Russia's acceptance that it has lost this war. With every victory, the Ukrainian army has inflicted irreparable wounds on Putin. Since the day it started its invasion, the Russian army has lost 100,000 soldiers. Despite all the losses, Putin's reputation was destroyed by the fact that he had no success. Finally, with a new attack launched by the Ukrainian army in the early hours of the morning, he destroyed 4 Russian military units. The Ukrainian army got stronger after aid from the European Union and the United States. After this victory, the Ukrainian army put Putin into a corner. Ukraine's attack on the Russian Air Defense Corps showed the effect of new weapons from the West. Ukrainian forces struck an air defense system in Russian-occupied territory in the east of the country late Monday. In the latest sign of how long-range artillery sent by the West has turned the tide of the war. Russian state news agencies reported that Ukrainian forces launched an attack on an air defense system protecting the skies of Luhansk, the capital of one of the 2 Russian-made statelets in the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine. After these news, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine issued a news statement. The enemy is holding a positional defense in the Kryvyi Rih and Kherson directions. The artillery shelling of our soldiers and settlements on the right bank of the Dnipro River, especially the city of Kherson, does not stop. The invaders continue to lose. Local hospitals in the Schastia district of the Luhansk province were overloaded due to the large number of injured invaders. The enemy is forced to medically evacuate the wounded soldiers to Luhansk. On November 25, it was confirmed that an enemy object was damaged in the settlement of Svatove. There were about 70 enemy soldiers there. The number of wounded and dead invaders is becoming clear. Our missile units and artillery units hit 3 areas where the enemy's personnel, weapons and military equipment are concentrated, he said. With this statement, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine confirmed the defeat of the Russian army. Later, the Ukrainian government announced that it had shot down 4 Russian warplanes and 8 Iranian-made drones over the weekend. While the Kremlin did not comment on the issue, Kyiv described it as one of the heaviest blows to the Russian Air Force in recent weeks. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Ignat said that Russian Iranian-made drones attacked Odessa early Sunday. The Southern Command of Ukraine announced that there were no casualties in the attack, and that the downed UAVs were Iranian-made Witness 136, called kamikaze, used in direct attacks on targets. On the other hand, the Ukrainian General Staff announced that the number of warplanes that the Russian army has lost so far is 259. In the written statement of the General Staff, it was claimed that the Russian army has lost 56,700 soldiers so far, along with 400 soldiers lost in the last 24 hours. The statement added that 220 helicopters, 2,275 tanks, 4,832 armored vehicles, 1,368 cannons, 328 rocket launchers, and 171 air defense systems belonging to the Russians were destroyed. The Ukrainian General Staff issued a written statement on the developments in the ongoing war against Russia in Ukraine on November 27. In the statement, it was noted that the counter-attack operation launched by the Ukrainian army to take back the settlements controlled by the Russian forces in the Kherson region continues. In the statement, which stated that the Russian forces in the region began to withdraw from some settlements. According to the information received, the enemy left the settlements of Charivne and Chikalov, and the military and medical personnel were evacuated from Berislav. Expressions were used. In the statement, it was informed that the Russian forces attacked various regions of Ukraine with 40 missiles and 16 kamikaze UAVs made by Iran, and 20 missiles and 11 UAVs were destroyed by the Ukrainian Air Defense Forces. Kirilo Timoshchenko, deputy head of the Ukrainian Presidential Office, announced yesterday that the Ukrainian army regained control of 88 settlements in the Kherson region in the south of the country until October 21. The losses do not end there. Russia continues to suffer losses in other parts of the war. In the war between Ukraine and Russia, which started on February 24 and has been going on for more than 9 months, the Ukrainian army hit the Russian positions with howitzers from the city of Bakhmut in Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast, where heavy conflicts have been experienced recently. Ukrainian armed forces targeted the observation tower of the invading Russian army in the Bakhmut region of Donetsk. In the operation carried out by the Special Operations Forces Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the observation point of the Russian invaders was hit. The Special Operations Forces Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces shared the footage of the Ukrainian army destroying the Russian observation tower in the Bakhmut region. In a statement made by the press service of the command, it was announced that the observation tower of the invading Russian unit in the region was hit with an ATGM-guided anti-tank missile. The images were shared on social media. A statement came from Kiev about the war in Ukraine, which fell like a bomb on the agenda. Ukraine announced that Russia hit the Izium command center and more than 200 soldiers were killed in the attack. A controversial claim was made about the number 1 of the Russian army in the region. Russia, which had targeted Kiev from the first day of the war, but could not take the city despite the siege that lasted 4 weeks, turned its target to the east. Putin, who still could not achieve the great success in the war that left behind 9 months, found the solution by sending Russian Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov to the region. According to the news in the British Daily Mail, Gerasimov, who led the war from the headquarters in Izium, was the target of the Ukrainian attack. There was no official statement from Russia on the subject. Some sources shared information that Gerasimov had shrapnel wounds to his leg and was taken to Russia for treatment. According to Zelensky's advisor, the issue took place the day after the 55-year-old Russian mayor General Andrei Simonov was killed in Kharkiv. Simonov was recorded as the 9th Russian general killed since the beginning of the war. While the Russian government rarely provides updates on the number of deaths suffered its armed forces, local governments and newspapers reported that at least 317 officers died in the fighting in the final defeat. Currently, the armed forces of Ukraine is conducting offensive activities in the Kherson region. The Ukrainian General Staff said in a statement this morning that the Russian occupation forces lost a large number of soldiers in the Kherson region on 26 November. In the latest statement from Ukraine, it was announced that 2 Russian cargo ships were hit. He announced that 6 Russian planes were destroyed and 50 Russian soldiers were killed. In the statement made by the Ukrainian Border Guards Association, 3 border guards were killed. After these statements, we see that the Russian army has lost everything in its hands. Heavy defeats shattered the Russian army. If the occupation continues in this way, it seems that the Ukrainian state will achieve victory very soon. Thank you for watching.